And greetings, everyone, and welcome yet again to another edition of the Urban Algorithm. I'm your host, Wayne Gilman, and we're on the Our World Media Network every week here. And it's a great Saturday afternoon here in New York where we're broadcasting live from. And I just want to say, in spite of all the greatness and the beauty and the drama that's going on in the world today, you know, we talk about it each week, and we'd like to think that things will progressively get better, but we take 1 week at a time, one day at a time. And normally what we talk about on this program is the political life here in the States, and we're going to change course today. We're going to go back into time, and I have someone who's a very, very special guest, and I'm honored that he took the time to, out of his busy schedule, to make himself available for me for this broadcast. And his name is James Cameron Jr., and James is a former broadcaster here in the New York area, in addition to continuing to broadcast in Williamsburg, Virginia. I had to remember, I know you're in Virginia, but I forgot exactly where. But James, welcome to the show, man. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here and to see that we're still breathing after 50 years.
Well, it's good to be here, and it's good to see that my little brother is all grown up.
Grown up with gray hair and not ready for the dirt nap yet, but, you know, each year that goes by, we worry about these things, but that's another subject. James, you and I have known each other for almost 55 years, roughly, and we met in high school.
Right.
Bishop Ford, which no longer exists. It's some sort of apartment complex, condo or something like that in Park Slope, Brooklyn. You're originally from Coney Island, that section of Brooklyn, for those who are familiar with the New York area. Coney Island is an amusement park, and there also is residential. It was. Yeah. I don't know what goes on there now. I follow the news, and it surprises me, but they're really trying to make a change for the better there, too. And I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, which is central Brooklyn, and at the time, one of the largest communities of African-American, African-Caribbean, and Indo-American people. And all that's changed. It's largely gentrified now. But
you can't afford to live there.
Yeah, I can't afford to live there, and I wish one of my family members, if they're watching, sell one of the buildings so we can make it into old age, you know. But at the end of the day, that's another story. And in fact, I intend to do something on real estate as time goes on with this. As I said at the very outset, that we normally discuss politics. But James, one of the reasons why I had you on is because there is such a radical change in the way broadcasting. You and I got into it, you through school at WQMC, and I was not as gifted as you were as a disc jockey, and my interest was in news. And if memory serves, you encouraged me to go out and just wander around the campus and take interviews of people on the campus. I got tired of that and decided to go outside the campus and start interviewing people that I would meet. And I was lucky enough to make a career out of it. And I thank you. I'm publicly thanking you that among the people who gave me my start, my inspiration is James Cameron Jr., there's David Lampell, Stephen Reed, Frankie Crocker, Eddie O.J. I mean, I could go into a whole list of people. And unfortunately, a lot of these guys aren't around, at least the people that I was able to rub shoulders with in the business as we started out. But I'm here to discuss your life. And you were one of the last of the big Super 16 disc jockeys, and explain Super 16 in context of people who are living in South Africa wouldn't understand. All right.
Right, exactly. Well, I started, as you said, we met at Bishop Ford High School. I was part of a drama group that one of your teachers was teaching a drama class, and he connected with Geraldine Fitzgerald Lou Gossett Jr., and some others. And they formed a drama group, which was the Everyman Company. And we traveled the parks. It was sponsored by the Park Service. And we would travel all across Brooklyn putting on these plays outside in the park. And eventually, we did a program at Lincoln Center, which to this day, I believe they still do that summer festival outside of Lincoln Center. And it started with us, which was 1969. And that's where I met you. I met you at Bishop Ford. It was just very casual. You had dropped in and saw what was going on in the auditorium. And we started talking, and we were friends. And, you know, I mean, we just had conversation. And that was it. And the next thing, for both of us, we look at each other because we're both from Brooklyn, and we end up at Queens College. So, you know, so there we are at Queens College, and John Hamilton, who ended up changing his name to Afende Afima.
Right.
You know, we all wanted to be African back then.
Back then, we wore our dashikis.
So,
you know, we didn't wash.
He got me involved. And I actually owe my whole career to him because he said, listen, you have a good voice. You should be on radio. I didn't even know what radio truly was. I mean, as an operation. And so he sacrificed some of his time. He was on for 2 hours. He gave me a half an hour of his slot. And I started going on the air. And, of course, as you know, I fell in love with it. And we took a trip to WWRL. This was in 1970. And it totally changed my life because it was myself and it was a number of other of the black radio announcers at WQMC. And we met Jerry Bolding. Jerry Bolding was the program director at RL, all of 5 feet 6 of them. And what I started to do was to, after class, instead of going home and taking a 2-hour trip to go home, which is what I had to do. I wasn't driving. I was taking the train, and it was 3 trains to get home. I was going out to Woodside, New York, to WWRL, and I was hanging out. And I was like, anytime any of the jocks wanted anything, I would go and get it. Hey, you know, I want to get a sandwich down at the, oh, fine, just give me the money. I'll go and get it for you. My whole thing was that I just wanted to be able to hang out and to be amongst the jocks and feel that I was a part of it, even though I wasn't a part of it. Well, what changed my life was after doing this for about almost a month, Rocky Bridges, who was the engineer, head engineer.
And the gospel disc jockey. Right,
exactly. And he would stay there until Gary Bird, who you know, used to come on and do the 12 o'clock. And so, you know, and Gary was always known as getting there late. I mean, that was just his reputation. And, you know, he would jump in like 2 minutes before he was to go on the air. Well, at this point, Rocky got an emergency call. He had to go home. And he said, listen, I know you know how to work the board. And I said, well, yeah. You know, you got to understand, I'm a 20-year-old kid, you know. And he goes, this is what I want you to do. If Gary isn't here, now this was about 20 minutes to 12. If Gary isn't here, then what I just want you to do is turn on the pipe. That's what we used to call it back then. And just do the station ID. And I'm scared as hell because Jerry Bolding had a reputation of listening all times during the day and all times at night. And so I'm praying that Gary comes in to save me. Well, he didn't. So here it is, 12 o'clock, and, you know, we put on the jingle, And the phrase that changed my life in broadcasting, that gave me an overall 17-year career in broadcasting, was your dial is set at 1600 WWRL New York. And the rest is history.
I hear that.
About a week later, I'm still hanging out at the station. I didn't say a word. I get called up to Jerry Bolding's office, and I'm scared as heck. I'm figuring he's going to tell me I can't, hang out anymore. So I go to him, and he says, Mr. Cameron, have a seat. He was very formal. And I'm 20 years old. I must be at least 20 years his junior. And he goes, did you do a live station ID? Now, this was on a Thursday, and I did it on a Monday. So by Thursday, I figured I had gotten away with it. And I knew he was only asking the question because he knew the answer. So I said, yeah. And he said, Gary was late again, wasn't he? Again? I knew he already knew the answer. And I said, and I started making excuses. Well, I'm not sure, traffic, this, that, and the other. And he said, Mr. Cameron, I want to offer you an internship and work here part-time as a fill-in. Do you think you would want to do that? I almost fell on the floor. RL was the number, this is before BLS.
Yeah.
So RL is the #1 African-American station in the nation. He could have told me I was on for 5 minutes in 6 months. It would have been fun.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, because even though WBLS and WLIB had a rich history and it was black owned, WWRL was like basically the black mecca in radio in
Absolutely.
New York and across the country. And a lot of people who worked there started out pretty much the way you did. I never had an opportunity to do that. But I have a similar story about, it seems that there are disc jockeys who have a propensity for being late. And I have a Ken Webb, Frankie Crocker story, which I'm not even about to recount, but it's just one of those things. But, you worked, Jerry, I was about to say Jerry Bledsoe. I guess Jerry Bledsoe was there at the time you worked there too. Right.
Jerry Bledsoe, Gary Bird, Enoch. Well, no, Enoch had already left.
Right.
I'm trying to think now. It's been so long. Of course, Hank Spann.
Right.
Who actually, Hank Spann, when I started doing relief, he came back after vacation and said, "You're taking all my, you're taking all my sayings," and I wasn't. It's just that my style was very
similar to his. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And and that's the other thing too. Personality radio really does not exist anymore. In a way, it's come through the talk format, where people are projecting who they are, based on their political ideologies or the way whatever it is that they're trying to hawk, they promote themselves that way. But it was interesting the way the disc jockeys back then, particularly the black disc jockeys, how they would come in and out of music. I think of the late, great Jocko Henderson. And half the people that you mentioned that, we all worked with, they're no longer here. It's amazing. And that I remember when I signed up to be a member of AFTRA, the union, and of course WWRL was a union shop, they said the average lifespan of a broadcaster was 55 years old.
Right.
Just to think, a lot,
not in black radio.
Right. Probably before that, God forbid. But and it's funny because as you mentioned that, I was just channel surfing last night looking at YouTube. I saw your video for the 10th time. And I don't know if you remember the guy who came out of homelessness 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Wendy Williams had him on. Ted Williams, no relation, but he was like the golden voice. And he was able to...
And it was ironic that you mentioned that because he said the person that inspired him was actually Hank Spann.
No
And
kidding.
I substituted for Hank Spann. So
Right.
I thought that was very, very
Oh, yeah, an
interesting.
interesting connection. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And he's still around. I mean, in fact, I wouldn't mind reaching out to him if he happens to
No,
see this broadcast. You know, I
his
saw
voice was
something.
incredible.
Oh, please. I would
I
kill
mean,
to
you
have a
talk
voice
about
like
a
that.
voice.
I know. But it's unfortunate, but that's so typical. I've worked with people in the industry who, unfortunately, this is a very unforgiving business. And if
Yeah.
you don't have a plan B, you know, you're blankety blank up Blanks Creek. You know, I won't go into all that, but you can
It's
read
like
it.
the NBA.
Yeah. And speaking of that, you had time in the NBA. You know, talk about that for a little bit.
Well, again, it was a situation where um, obviously I was looking. I always thought about basketball, but I was one of those guys that was never a touted player. You know, I didn't have scouts coming to look for me. And I was playing some pickup games run by the Park Service with the New York Knicks. And they had just won the championship. It was 1969. It was the summer before I went to Queens College.
Mm,
And they had Emmett Bryant, Dave Stallworth, Mike Reardon, Pablo Robinson, and
wow.
Dave Stallworth. And, you know, they literally destroyed me that 69 year going into college. Well, in 1970, I played college ball. In those days, when you came in as a freshman, you played freshman basketball. It doesn't like now you can go straight to varsity.
Right.
Well, back in those days, you had to play freshman basketball first, then you can go up into varsity. And I ended up going at the end of that year, 1970. Part of the summer was at the Knicks training camp, which at that time was in East Hampton, Long Island. And I was playing against guys, you know, in college from St. Bonaventure, St. Peter's, you know, that type of quality type players.
Right.
And needless to say, I got to be very good. So that summer, when they came back, I had a whole year to fester how they had embarrassed me, which they really did, especially Nate Baldwin. And so we're playing this pickup game, and to make a long story short, we still ended up losing 10-9, but I scored 6 of the 9 points, and it was all on jump shots, and I'm screaming at Nate Bowman, you know, that, you know, I was calling out my jump shots. So I would hit one, and I'd scream out one. I would hit another one, I'd scream out two. And my coach, who was my Y coach before I got into college, because Nate Bowman had a very bad reputation, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he yelled out at Nate, don't hurt him. He's a kid. But in any event, what happened was I ended up playing in Rucker Pros. Emmett Bryant, who had played against me those 2 years when they came to the park, saw me play. I was playing for Walter Duke's team, and I was playing against the team that was led by Hawthorne Wingo, and I'm scoring these jump shots on him. He came up to me, and he said, I remember you playing in the park. Can I have your name and number? And okay. So I gave him my name and number. About maybe 3 weeks later, I come home. I was living at home at the time. And my father says, you got a call from some Emmett Bryant from the Knicks. Now, my parents, as you know, were Jamaicans, and, you know, they really didn't follow American sports but so much. My father would come out occasionally and see me play basketball, but that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I call him up, and this is what he says, and that also changed my life. James, I couldn't get you a tryout with the Knicks. Are you willing to go to Kansas City? I didn't even know Kansas City had a team. It was a Kansas City
Kings. Yeah.
And I didn't make it on the first try. I didn't make it on the second try. And on the third try, I almost didn't go because I was applying for the FBI. I wanted to either be an NBA player or Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.
Well, I don't know about the latter with you.
He was on the TV series called The FBI.
Yeah.
So I go up there the third time. I get offered a contract. It was a 10-day. Of course, I took it because I figured, well, if they don't sign me for the second 10-day, at least I can go back to the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
As it turns out, they signed me to a 10-day, and then they signed me to a second 10-day. And once they did that, then the contract went for the whole season. And they did that for 2 years. They did that 77 and 79. And that was my
career
2 big years of the NBA.
Yeah, and I could imagine them if we were to juxtapose salaries then compared to salaries now.
Listen, man.
You wouldn't even have this conversation with me, would you?
Listen, I'm figuring this. I ballooned up at one time to 308 pounds. I mean, I really ballooned.
Wow.
That was many years ago, though.
Yeah.
I am now down to 250. I figure if I could just lose another 5 pounds, I'm getting ready to call the commissioner and text him and tell him I have every intentions of coming back.
Yeah, I think a lot of us would like to turn the clock back and think that way, But
minimum contract today, minimum, is $1.2 million.
Isn't it amazing? Amazing.
I'll take 10 days of $1.2 million.
Yeah, and not everybody who earns that salary is like a Kyrie Irving or a Stephen Curry or.
As I said, that's the minimum.
Yeah.
You got guys that are making, $8 million, $12 million, $30 million a year.
It's amazing. It's
amazing. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I remember when Walt Frazier signed this contract. For $425,000, people had babies.
Right. I know.
Well, remember, Magic signed a contract for $1 million a year for 10 years, and they thought that was crazy.
Crazy, exactly. And it's not just applicable to the NBA, but it seems to be in all sports. I'm amazed at what these baseball players are being paid. And especially if they're out sick, tennis is another one, So it's turned into be a money game. And speaking of money, I know you have always, all from the time I met you, you've had this thing in your heart about a Rolls-Royce.
Yeah.
And I'm segueing, and I'm hoping we're having time. Maybe we could take a break, or should we? All right, we'll take a break right now. You are listening to the Urban Algorithm and hopefully watching at the same time. My history is radio, so I always go for the mic first as opposed to the camera. And if you're looking at me, you know why. But anyhow, I'm honored to have my childhood friend and fellow broadcaster James Cameron Jr. with us. We'll be back with more right after this on the Our World Media Network.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping. Maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Type 2 diabetes can have a big impact on your life, but how can it be prevented? Well, the first step is knowing if you have prediabetes, a serious medical condition that puts you at high risk for type 2 diabetes. 1 in 3 American adults has prediabetes, but more than 80% don't know they have it. The good news is, prediabetes can be reversed, and for many people, healthy changes in their daily routine can make a big difference. Take the 1-minute risk test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
There is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere. And this is gonna be Addie's room.
I am blind,
You really gonna like it?
I hope so. Yeah. I know this road is there for me. There is a long way.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
The ways down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know this road is there for me.
Okay.
If I'm really free take me down to the river and wash me.
We come from where most.
I feel like mental health for me is a thing that doesn't really get talked about. It's harder for us to express our feelings because we're taught young to bottle them up. My name is Tobe Chukwudu Bemwigwe. I'm an Igbo boy from the southwest side of Houston, Texas, and I'm here to talk with Muhammad and Jordan about emotions, feelings, mental health. And, you know what I'm saying, we're just gonna let the spirit move.
I'm Jordan, I'm 12 years old.
I'm Muhammad. This is my stepson. I just call him my son.
As a father, it's your responsibility to lead your children into being mentally healthy, emotionally healthy.
Sometimes when I cry, I won't know how I'm feeling or why I'm crying.
I just grew up never feeling like it was okay to cry. And so he really forced me to have to reconnect with the kid that didn't get to cry.
That's beautiful. In the society that we were brought up in, it's very hard on little black boys. So you have to navigate feelings and emotions so the world don't get you.
We had to learn why kids burn, but we fly, even though they poison us down. We don't cry, we gon' take our piece of the pie.
And welcome back once again. You're listening to the Urban Algorithm on the Our World Media Network. I'm Wayne Gilman. My special guest today, longtime buddy, childhood friend, James Cameron Jr., all the way from Williamsburg, Virginia. And, and how is the rarefied air in Virginia? I know there's a lot of racism down there. You're allowed to vote? Did you vote the last election?
Actually, Virginia is basically Democratic.
Yeah, it's changing. It's unfair for me to say that.
So, it has really, I've been here now going on 16 years. It really started changing, I would say, within the first 3 years that I got here. And it has radically changed in the last 10 years. There's a Democratic House of Delegates, there's a Democratic governor, soon to have another Democratic governor reelected, which would be Terry McAuliffe. So Virginia, per se, as far as that's concerned, is very Democratic.
Yeah,
we don't have the issues that a lot of the other southern states have. Now, that does not mean that obviously that there's not probably some sort of racism and bigotry, but you can get that in New York where you are.
Well,
we had Charlottesville here.
Yeah,
but they've also now taken off all the Confederate statues. So, it's
slow progress.
It's showing progress. It's a Democratic legislature. It's a Democratic governor. To be honest, even when it wasn't, I really had no issues here, which to me, coming from New York, was amazing just in itself.
Well, that's commendable. I mean, I haven't tried. I mean, I look at Virginia, and I don't want to get wedded because this is my wheelhouse. Getting into politics. I really want to talk about your show and what you're doing. But the one thing I look at is as the gateway to the South. Some people will look at maybe Georgia or the Carolinas and all that. But there's a certain culture that is a link with all those southern states, and a lot of the history is still there. And as you mentioned Charlotte just a moment ago, I mean, it was unfortunate what happened then. But it's great to know that change seems to be on the horizon, and hopefully it'll stay that way. And maybe one day, you never know, I may wake up and you might be my neighbor or whatever, and that sort of thing. Anyway, before the break, I sort of was going to segue into your university that you started. You know, it's an accredited institution, isn't it? Okay. And but the thing that really gets to me, man, from the time you were a child, and I'm saying a child, but we were teenagers.
Yeah.
You've always talked about a Rolls-Royce. I could never get it. I couldn't get past my father's Ford Fairlane, let alone a Rolls-Royce. I figured if he had a Rolls,
have a car.
Yeah, well, that's it. Oh, please, you know. Oh, you never.
At least you had a Ford Fairlane.
Yeah, well, actually, he gave me a Torino that I banged up 8 times,
and I don't think they. Me to the train station
I was just gonna say that. I mean, you were among the many that used to grace the car, and if my beloved father's looking down, I'm not saying that I was distracted by James, but I didn't know what I was doing. So
let me tell you, you would like to have that back now.
Oh, it's a collector's item. I don't throw away anything, including my underwear. So, anyhow, Rolls-Royce, Bentley University. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I got started in February. That was our initial launch. And I said, you know, because I bought the car 3.5 years ago, and I had nothing but problems. I did everything wrong, and there was no guide about these cars. So as I was discovering different ways to remedy problems with the car, I said, well, you know, there could be a number of things happening here. One, it could be a play it forward to other people that also had a dream of these cars, but always fell for the hype. You know, the cars are so expensive, or, you know, if you can't afford to buy a new one, you can't afford the upkeep on an old one. You know, all the rumors that were out there, and you know, heard growing up and about even having one of these cars. And so I said, you know what? I'm almost at the end of the situation of having the car totally restored.
I grew up in Coney Island, Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
and,
what a time it was.
So I decided to start this channel.
Okay.
And the amount of affection and love and outreach that I have received doing this channel, in a way, has been, I'm not overemphasizing here, even up to just this morning, has been overwhelming. I mean, if you just read the comments. One guy said, James, I wish your channel had existed 20 years ago. I would have saved $40,000. I had another one that said, keep it going. Your channel is great. It's very informative, information-wise. Keep it going. I mean, nothing but affection and love and caring and, what's next.
I also worked in radio broadcasting for over 50
There you have it.
Right.
I started this channel.
Very briefly.
And
in the
there you go.
And I'm seeing pictures of you. I don't know if you can see this from your screen.
I can see it. That's me in high school.
Okay. God, James, you had hair.
Brooklyn College.
Oh, okay. And here you are in your roles.
A few years ago,
and I have to say, as I said, I'm not putting it down. I think that's a gorgeous looking car, and I think I see your affection, coming out in your
but it was through
shorts
and error that I
I don't know what kind of top you had on. It went by so quickly.
It was my jacket. It was a dinner jacket,
right,
with my hat.
That could
and
save the buyer of future cars like
and
this thousands of dollars.
Well, as I'm watching this, I'm reminded there's a place in Lower Manhattan down by Battery Park City And
have now
it's a
taken
building
that
where they
knowledge
house
and will
cars
now
like
share it
these.
with
I like the car
My
you're
name
driving
is
in this
James
particular
Cameron,
show
and I want
segment
to
now.
welcome you
Is
to
that
the Rolls-Royce
something
and
like
Bentley University
maybe 10 years
Buyers
old
Guide.
or older, or is it younger, or what?
It's older. It's a 35-year-old car, now soon to be 36.
Okay, now those vehicles are in demand. And ironically, what I find that they're in demand for, and of course they have to be housed properly, is that when movie producers, not to capitalize on your name, because obviously you were here before the other James Cameron, but the thing is just that they look for when they do period pieces, they look for vehicles like that, and they pay a tremendous sum of money. There was somebody shooting a movie in Yonkers the other day, about 3 or 4 months ago. Some high-profile actors were in it, and they wanted some cars from the 70s, and they offered, not that I have one, I'm sorry that I ever got rid of mine, but I was surprised that there was a tremendous sum of money that was being offered for use of a vehicle like that. And I'm certain, someone like yourself, now that you're on YouTube doing this and you've been highly successful with it, have you gotten approached?
Well, unfortunately, not yet. But I know from what you talked about, my daughter, who is involved in Hollywood, has also said that she's going to send me a list of companies that what you do, the way it works, is that you get in touch with the company, you let them know that you are insured, even though they insure your car for the shoot, and you send them pictures, you give them background, and then when it comes necessary for them to be able to use your car, they will, of course, give you a contract. They will let you know how long the duration is. And at that point of the duration, they actually own your car. So that's the funny part of this whole thing. But that they still pay you, depending on the type of car that you have, and depending on what the use of the car is going to be. That is where the scale of how much they pay you comes from. Maybe sometimes, it can be as low, as far as I'm concerned, low, as let's say $300 a day, and it could be upwards of $1,500 a day.
Well, I've gotten quotes in New York as much as maybe $3,000 a week. They figure that you're the one who's being inconvenienced. But that we're talking New York versus Virginia, maybe.
No, but again, a week does not necessarily have to be a week. A week can be the amount of time that they are going to be using the car. So, for example, they might say a week, but maybe that shoot is only 3 days.
Gotcha.
So it depends. A week does not, in other words, what I'm just saying is a week is not what we think of a week, 7 days.
No, I hear what you're saying, yeah.
It depends.
Well, let me ask you, so to insure and house something, I'm into tangible assets. I believe in the stock market, but I also feel that, something like that might be worth restoring and keeping it kept. Of course, you live in a very opulent neighborhood there from what I see and all the rarefied air. I still have to put up with the Bloods and the Crips and the Nits and the Chaplains and people looking to break into cars, in New York. What does insurance on a vehicle like that run you? If you don't mind me asking.
Well, let me first say that you need to watch one of my videos on insurance.
Okay, all right. But I mean, just giving,
But in any event, there are a number of companies, some that you might have heard of. For example, have you ever heard of State Farm?
Oh, yeah.
Well, State Farm has classic car insurance. There's a number of others. Like, have you ever heard of Geico?
Yeah. In fact, I was about to do business with them the other day.
Insurance. And there's other cars. There's other insurance like All American. There's Hemmings. There's a number of them. But to answer your question, it just based on two different things. How are you going to be using the car?
Mm-hmm.
If you're basically just going to be taking it out on the weekends, maybe going to a restaurant, maybe going to a car show every once in a while, well, the insurance can be as low as less than $200 a year. Okay? If you're like me, where you're going to be driving it a lot more, you're almost going to have it as a daily driver, just like you would have any other family car that you have. Then now you can go anywhere between $200 and, on the high side, I would say anywhere from $200 to $325 a year.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, because this is very interesting, and again, I'm not trying to expose your business or whatever.
No, that's
but
fine.
I mean, do you? Okay, all right. I mean, it's in many ways this may be driving traffic to your show, but the bottom line is that I'm wondering, in a situation like you, I would be inclined to probably park that vehicle in a garage or a yard where people wouldn't be in anyone's eyesight. Don't tell me you would take that to Home Depot or Costco or, do you? James, don't kid me. You go to
that car through. Listen, I have driven that car through Popeyes. I have driven that car to Walmart. I will drive that car everywhere. You don't want to know why?
Well,
people look to it.
I
People
can
never
imagine.
see Rolls-Royce.
Right.
And they want to see it. They want to touch it. They want to look inside of it.
And they think you're Michael Jordan.
So for me, and especially with my channel, it's about letting, quote unquote, the common man know that these cars are available to you. They're not pie in the sky.
Right.
I grew up, point of interest. I bought this car going on 4 years ago. All right. 4 years ago, I was 68 years old. That's how long I waited before I finally told my wife, listen, if I don't get it now, I ain't ever getting it.
Yeah.
And you know what she said to me? Get your freaking car. You've been talking about it since I met you. So I got the car, but like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. So I did everything wrong. But now I know how to do everything right, and I'm sharing it. But one of the biggest things that I have seen is that people just think that these cars are pie in the sky, and it's not. Believe it or not, you can get a 35, 40-year-old Rolls-Royce. Think about it. It's 35 to 40 years old. You can get one for under $10,000.
But what about the technology, the gas consumption? Now, Rolls-Royce, they make a great engine. I've flown in planes. You know, a lot of people don't know that they really are great at manufacturing airplanes, engines, that is. You know, you hear about the cars, but they're actually known for that. And more people in our community, in fact, I have I'm not to expose my business too much, but I have a couple of tenants who own BMWs, and I don't understand why. I guess, and BMW owns Rolls-Royce and Bentley, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, BMW owns Bentley, and BMW owns Rolls-Royce.
That's what I thought.
So I guess you can say they did win the war.
Yeah, and because at one time they were competing against each other.
Yeah.
Which one has? I'm sorry.
No, that's
I was going to say, which one has more value? The Bentley name, or they're about the same in terms of?
They're still just about the same, but I would say for a younger generation, like for example, if you watch a lot of music videos and with rappers and artists, artsy type of people, they tend to drive the Bentley. The Bentley is much more of a European feel car, rack and pinion steering, all the pomp and circumstance, all the schmaltz, all the gadgets. they say the difference between a Rolls-Royce and a Bentley is very simply this. With a Bentley, you look at the car. With a Rolls-Royce, you look to see who's driving the car.
Is that right?
So that's kind of always been the theory between the two cars. They were actually two separate entities which got bought in 1931 during the Depression. W.O. Bentley went out of business. And Rolls-Royce bought Bentley because Bentley was their competition. So they bought out Bentley, and then they just turned around and made the Bentley like a Rolls-Royce, except it had a different grille.
Now, let me it's funny because I didn't know the history that way. I just thought BMW just recently, within the last, 10, 15 years, they purchased both.
No, but that's true. That's true.
How, okay.
What I'm saying is Rolls-Royce Limited bought out Bentley in 1931.
Right.
During the Depression. They now, what they did to knock off Bentley, because Bentley, like I said, was their competition. Well, now they own their competition.
Right.
So what they did was they just put a Bentley grille on the Bentley, but it was a Rolls-Royce.
What about the market? But what about the market share? Who would, if you were selling Bentley, who would you approach as opposed to a Rolls-Royce?
I'm not sure I'm getting your question.
In other words, if you're looking for a particular, like I happen to like, and I'm going to break it down into poor man lingo, I like Toyota Camrys, all right? Okay. I now like Nissan Altimas, you know? I have a mechanic, actually he's no longer my mechanic, he just recently retired. He always told me that whenever I buy something new, go after a Camry because all the cab drivers purchase those vehicles and they're durable or what have you.
Right.
What, if I'm inclined, and maybe I'm getting off topic to a certain extent.
I know where you're going. Let me answer your question this way.
Yeah.
Let me answer your question this way. And we're going to compare it also with other
vehicles,
classic cars.
Ferraris.
If you're into Ford Mustangs.
Yeah.
If you're into Stingrays, if you're into muscle cars, you're going to go for the Bentley. If you're into the Cadillacs, if you're into the Lincolns, if you're into the Buicks, you're going to go Rolls-Royce.
And there is, okay, I got you. And there is a market share for both. I mean, does one make more money than the other? Maybe that's perhaps something else that would be of interest.
Does one make more money than the other? Again, it depends on the years. If you're talking about up to 1999, when Rolls-Royce still owned both, I would say no. I would still go for, even though you had the Turbo R, which took off and which changed Bentley, even though it was still tied to Rolls-Royce. But when they changed the Bentley from a regular Rolls-Royce 6.75 liter V8 to a 6.75 liter V8 turbo, that changed the dynamics. So people started getting into the Bentleys. It had bigger tires, it had better suspension, wasn't quite roly-poly like a Rolls. It was a whole different feel and a whole different car. You're talking 0 to 60 back then with the Turbo Rs at about 6 seconds.
Right.
As opposed to maybe 11 seconds with a Rolls-Royce. So just two different cars.
Two different vehicles. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Is there ever any interest? And of course, you're not marketing these. You're doing this out of it's a labor of love in a way. You know, but you said just recently, because I noticed on one of your YouTube videos that Morgan Evans is his name.
Yeah, Morgan.
He used to work for
Evan Morgan.
Evan Morgan. I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is, I don't know if you have any empirical information. Would they ever go into a situation where they would produce a Rolls-Royce that may have an SUV look or you know what I'm talking
They
about?
do.
Oh,
They
they
do.
do.
They have
Oh,
a
okay. I
Caliban.
didn't. Yeah.
They have an SUV called the Caliban. They already do.
And what about the Bentley?
I think there is a comparable Bentley, but remember, Bentley now, when you talk about a Rolls-Royce and you talk about a Rolls-Royce Caliban, that's Rolls-Royce. Bentley, I'm not sure if they have a comparable one. I would not be surprised if they do.
Right.
But it would be two separate companies. It would like be being a Lexus and, the comparable, what is it? What's the other one that they have? You have a Lexus, and then on the other side you have. See, I don't even deal with those cars.
Right. Well, I mean, the Infinity with the Nissan.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Two different companies.
Right. But the concepts, I mean, I understand that, and even though BMW is producing both, it's in their arsenal. But so to speak. But the deal
BMW,
is,
again, to make it clear, BMW does Rolls-Royce,
and it does,
and Volkswagen does Bentley.
Okay, so I'm glad you clarified. So actually, that's all they do.
Companies.
Yeah. All right. Because I thought they were still owned by the same.
No.
All right.
No.
So I'm glad you. I'm confused, and I'm sorry if I've caused any further confusion.
It's like I said, in 1931, during the Depression, Bentley was bought out by Rolls-Royce, and they became one unit. In 2000 plus, they were now separate again. They were bought out separately. So they went back to, in a way, their natural origins, being two separate companies.
Okay, and they compete against each other. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Well,
I'm just trying to do quickly, because I think we might be running out of some time here.
Yeah.
What I'm just trying to do with my channel is to say, listen, you can get into these cars for as little as $8,000. That's a used car. Now, are the mechanics slightly different? Yes, they are. But it's also a GM transmission. There are a lot of GM components on those cars.
Is that right?
The transmission is, like I said, is a GM transmission. The power antenna is a Cadillac power antenna. There's a lot of what they call OEM parts that you can buy that fit different GM cars that will now fit on the Rolls. I'm getting my air conditioning done. The air conditioning unit is the same as a Chevrolet. 1985 Chevrolet.
All right,
that's
and
my air conditioning unit.
And these are, I know you mentioned that they're off the market products that can be available still, but they're reasonably priced so that if you want to make repairs on it, it's not a pound in the crown.
But I'm going to hit on your point, which was where you were going originally, which is market value.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that to make sure that we get that in before we get off.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm going to take all my mistakes and still throw it in. I paid $11,000 for this car. Now, I'm going to take all my mistakes and still throw it in.
It looks more than that.
$11,000 for this. Right. Now, this car, I have put in about another, call $5,000 in the car.
Right.
Now, so now you're talking $16,000 about another, call $5,000 in the car.
Right.
So now you're
We're
talking
losing a little bit of the transmission. All right.
That's fine.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
So the bottom line is, it is insured right now for $23,000. If something were to happen to that car, and that car got totaled, I made $7,000. You can't do that with a Lexus or a BMW or a Mercedes. You're going to lose money.
So this is a good investment.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Because you can insure it for what the value is. And the value is always going to be more than what you paid for it.
I never looked at it that way. I mean, it's so basically, it's an aesthetic thing. What it really comes down to, if you are attracted to this particular vehicle, it is worth it to you because the value, it increases in value, whereas most cars, they depreciate in value.
All cars depreciate. This car was $108,000 when it was just off the assembly line.
Right. Brand new.
That was in 1985. That could have bought you 2 homes.
Right.
Everything is relative,
Mm-hmm.
but it has depreciated 90%.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's
affordable.
Yeah, it's an investment that I think that if you're inclined to purchase something along those lines, you know, that, and I guess, and you've proven now that there's a market for it because of the response that you've been getting, you know.
You have some people, Wayne, it blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling me they got 6 of them.
Wow.
10 of them. There is one guy, people, Wayne, it blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling there's an individual in Upper Virginia, 32. I asked him, do you have a museum? But because they're so affordable, a lot of people are buying them, fixing them up. Now, they do have the money to do it. It does take some.
But they sell them too, I guess, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So you buy it just for argument, you buy it for $5.
Right.
You put another $3,000 into it. It's $11,000. You sell it for $15, $16, you made money.
And I, you know, in one of the videos I saw where one of your students had the woodwork and the upholstery done over. Is that expensive? Is that something that you can get off the market, or is that something that it's not comparable to how it looks when it's new?
You have artisans that you say Rolls-Royce or Bentley. What he had done to his car would have been anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000 in most places that do restorations. The person that you see, Susan Price, did his whole car for less than $1,000.
And this is the interior, because I mean I saw the woodwork, and so therefore she's not going to Rolls-Royce or someone. This is just someone who does this professionally and is able to restore it to its natural beauty. Yeah, amazing. That's not
because all you have to do, go anywhere and just say Rolls-Royce and Bentley, and the cost has gone up 50%, if not 100%.
Right.
So you have to, you just have to do your due diligence. A lot of the parts are available online, and you just make sure that you do your Google searches and you make some phone calls, and you will find these people. But if you're not willing to do that, then I say stay out of the car, because the car will cost you money.
Right.
They want as much as $225, as much as $300 for one tire on my car.
Unbelievable.
My guy got me a tire, not a known entity, but still a very good quality tire for $100.
I tell you, I'm amazed, and the only reason why I could understand your justification, I've known your passion for this vehicle since the time we met each other 50 years ago almost. Hard to believe. You know?
Knowing what I know now, I could have had it 50 years ago.
Yeah, probably. You probably would have had my ex-wife with it, because I wasn't spending that kind of money. Anyhow. No disrespect wherever you are.
No, man. One thing I gotta also put in. I know we're running out of time.
Right, we are.
I do work now in radio. I'm still involved in radio. I work at WMBG, which is the local Williamsburg radio station.
Right.
I'm on in the morning, so you're still asleep. You already know this.
Yeah, I know.
I come on the air from 6 to 8. And on Mondays, I do Motown and more. I do all R&B and Motown in the first hour.
Well, we're trying to get you up to New York, and pretty soon you'll be able to join the ranks of the Our World Media Network. I know your price may
I'm
be
looking
high.
forward to it.
Yeah, you know, I'm still getting car fare from these people. As I said in the last show, you know, all I make from them is last class on the Long Island Railroad, you know, but I'm grateful. I say support all black businesses out here, and even BLS and WLIB. When I first started, you know, it was like that too until they became, you know, the legendary institution that it is. So it's not impossible. BET, all these places. So I'm not putting, this is not a put down.
No.
We have to start from somewhere, and that's it.
Absolutely.
James Cameron Jr., man, it is good to see your face, you know, and I applaud you, and I'll be watching your video, and I hope, not to be so shameless here, that you would plug mine, even though I'm in a different direction. I want to get this on tape, you know, that you intend to endorse my products and send viewers my way, you know?
Absolutely.
This is like radio back in the day, you know, where we'd have to support one another.
Gotta support one another.
That's the deal. That's what it's about. But thank you again. We're going to have you back. Hopefully we'll have a few viewers who will be interested in watching your channel. And again, how do people reach you on and off YouTube?
Well, they can go to my YouTube channel, which of course is, as I said, Rolls-Royce and Bentley University. The full name is Rolls-Royce and Bentley University Buyer's Guide. But if they just put in Rolls-Royce and Bentley University, that will come up. And they can go to my email, which is rr&b buyersguide@gmail.com. And also they can leave a comment, and I answer all my comments.
That's good to hear. I'm learning about that now. Anyhow, all the best, my brother. It's good to see you, and we'll have you back again. This is the Urban Algorithm.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure also. My name is Wayne Gilman, and we're on the Our World Media Network. Thank you for tuning in.